The Grinberg Enigma of Canada. The village of Sainte Marguerite de Lac-Masson in Quebec was never known for anything more remarkable than its frost-bitten winters and postcard-perfect lake views. But if you ventured far enough into its spruce woods, beyond the tourist paths, you'd eventually find a crooked signpost nailed to a birch tree. Grinberg Estate. Private. Most locals would tell you to steer clear, not because of ghosts or curses. No one was sure enough to make such claims. Just a quiet, wary avoidance, the kind bred from things best left unspoken. The Grinbergs, originally from Eastern Europe, had arrived in Canada in the 1930s. They were reclusive, brilliant, and peculiarly out of step with time. Some said they were artists, others whispered of physicists or alchemists. Over 3 generations they lived in near total isolation, their family manor hidden from view by a thick pine forest and a private gravel road that few dared to take. And then, in the winter of 1997, the Grinbergs vanished. No bodies, no note, no signs of violence, just a fully stocked pantry, fires still warm in the hearth, and every door locked from the inside. The local authorities investigated, of course, but after months with no leads, no sightings, and no evidence of foul play, the case was closed. The Grinberg estate was left to rot beneath snow and moss, a time capsule of mystery. Over the next 2 decades, the estate became a minor legend among urban explorers and supernatural enthusiasts. It was 2023 when Clara Vance first heard about the Grinbergs. A graduate student in folklore studies at McGill University, Clara had always been drawn to obscure disappearances, folk hauntings, and the line between reality and myth. Her professor had offhandedly mentioned the Grinberg case during a seminar on post-migration mysticism. Clara dug deeper, and she didn't like what she found. The first visit. The estate was now owned by a trust, still legally tied to next of kin, despite no heirs having ever come forward. Clara, tenacious and persuasive, managed to obtain a temporary research permit. She arrived in early November, a week before the first snow. The house loomed at the end of a gravel drive, 3 stories of dark stone and green copper roofing with windows like empty eye sockets and a turret half swallowed by ivy. It reminded her more of a Transylvanian chateau than a Canadian home. Inside, everything was preserved unnaturally well. Dusty, yes, but untouched by time. Furniture still stood where it had been left. A phonograph held a silent record mid-spin. A child's wooden dollhouse stood on a rug in the study, door ajar. And in the hallway hung a gallery of oil portraits, each Grinberg patriarch painted in the same stiff, austere style, their eyes cold and unyielding. Clara set up a cot in the downstairs parlor, unpacked her journals, and began cataloging the estate. It was during her second night that she heard the whispering, not outside the house, within it, not loud, but intimate, urgent, as though 2 people were murmuring right beside her, behind a wall she couldn't find. She followed the sound to a room with a long-forgotten piano. On its cracked lid lay an open notebook. One word was scrawled across the first page in looping Cyrillic, protect them. 2. The forgotten language. Over the next week, Clara became increasingly obsessed with the journals left behind by Mikhail Grinberg, the last known resident of the estate. Written in a strange mix of archaic Russian, Hebrew, and mathematical notation, they chronicled experiments with sound, memory, and spatial distortions. One entry stood out. There are places that do not forget, places that remember what stood there and will call it back if disturbed. The estate is one of them. We did not build it. We awakened it. Clara's notes grew frantic. Something was off about the architecture itself. Rooms didn't measure correctly. The east corridor stretched longer by 2 meters each day. Mirrors reflected angles that didn't exist. Time slipped. 10 minutes lost here, an hour gained there. And always the whispering, now louder, now almost pleading. On the 10th night, Clara discovered a narrow staircase hidden behind a wall panel in the study. The stairs led downward, far deeper than the manor's foundation should have allowed. She descended. The machine. Beneath, the air grew colder, wetter, and infused with a low-frequency hum. At the bottom was a chamber that didn't look built, but rather grown, its walls a fusion of iron and quartz. In the center stood a machine, a circular platform surrounded by tuning forks, copper rods, and a dome of glass vanes that pulsed like veins. On a plinth beside it, Clara found the final journal entry. We thought it would be a gate. We thought we could reach them, those we lost, but the machine reached too far, and something older answered. We sealed the chamber, but it remembers, the estate remembers, and it will not let go. Clara's breath clouded in the air. The humming grew louder. The machine throbbed with light. She ran, but the estate had changed. Doors no longer led where they had. Staircases moved behind her, and from the portraits, the eyes of the Grinbergs now followed her with grim resignation, as if they too were trapped. She barely escaped. The return back in Montreal, Clara published her findings under a pseudonym. Her paper was met with skepticism, even ridicule. The academic world was not ready for a tale of houses that remember or machines that echo grief through dimensions. But Clara was not done. She returned a year later, this time with sound equipment, thermal imaging, and a team of 3 grad students. They set up camp in the estate, determined to map the distortion, to prove that memory could imprint itself on architecture. They vanished. No one ever found them. But weeks later, a package arrived at Clara's old apartment, now occupied by someone else. No return address. Inside, a photograph of the Grinberg portraits. New figures had been added to the wall, 4 of them. Their eyes were closed, but one, Clara's, was just beginning to open. The end, or perhaps the beginning, if the estate remembers you too.